What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of the NFL Betting Show here live on our FTN YouTube page. If you're hanging out with us live, smash that like button. You're watching a little bit later, also smash that like button. You have any comments, any questions, you can leave them there in the comments section. We will always circle back on these videos. If a line moves, we can chat about that. Hey, I watched later on. I'm seeing, 6-7 yards on a guy that you liked, a little bit higher. Do you still like that? Always circling back on these videos. 4-man show here today. Woo! Man. Oh my goodness. Hard to top last week. Choudhury, Dane, Prop, you've been killing it. You just nice to have you part of the 4-man show here. 12 for 13 last week, guys. So yes, we're not going to pat ourselves on the back every week. We'll hold ourselves accountable when it doesn't go right. We'll talk about what didn't go right for us, but it was a good show. And hopefully we can carry that over here for you guys today. Any questions at all, reach out. PropGod, you see the Twitter handle, Dane Martinez at Spittin' Speeds. We have Sam Choudhury in the house as well, killing it for us over at FTN Fantasy. So just a friendly reminder before we get going, we have some free tools, links inside the description of this video. Prop Shop, it's like Google search if you're unfamiliar. Type in a player, a team, anything you want. You will see most of the books pop up. Saves you a lot of time and a lot of cash. We'll talk about a couple players in particular where I'm seeing some major difference. It could be as much as 5-6 yards at the same price. Why wouldn't we take the better number there? And then the parlay calculator, free as well. Very similar to the Prop Shop. Get the best possible number, save you a little bit of time. And of course, you have the NFL betting model as well. What's going on? Anybody, any questions? Leave them there. We can get to them. Starter set questions. We can get them towards the end of the show, and we will answer those questions as well. Yes, let's go. We are ready. Prop, check your DM.
Check your DMs, Prop. Someone sliding in.
Oh, man. I get that like 3 times a day. I'm about to turn my DMs off. But good morning.
Slide on in. Let's head on over to Spittin' Speeds. We'll go to the bottom right side here. Dane, where are we starting? What's on the card for week 5?
Let's start by going across the pond. And by the way, get your lineups in early because remember, Jets and Vikings, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, 6:30 a.m. on the West Coast, 3:30 a.m. if you are in the beautiful islands of Hawaii. So get it going. So I like some things in this Jets-Vikings game. The first thing I'm going to give out for you is actually Mike Williams. I like Mike Williams going over his receiving yards number. I went to the prop shop today. The lowest number you can get is 31.5. I got to tell you, I got it earlier in the week at 28.5. So the movement that is happening is going on our side. More and more people think that Big Mike can, in fact, have a day. Listen, Mike Williams was nursing an injury coming into the season. He has had increased targets every week of the NFL season, increased receptions every week of the NFL season, increased yards every week of the NFL season as he starts to ramp up. The other big story around the Jets passing game has been that Garrett Wilson hasn't been doing the same exact things as maybe anticipated as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And a lot of people are saying, listen, defenses are rolling coverages over. Defenses are double teaming Garrett Wilson, forcing Aaron Rodgers to get the ball to other places like Allen Lazard, like Tyler Conklin, and like Big Mike Williams. And I think that's a big part of it. Mike Williams has gone over this number in his last 2. And we all also know Mike Williams is the deep threat guy. Mike Williams is the big play guy. His longest reception prop is 16.5. So when you consider that and what he can do per catch, this could get happening in only 1 or 2 catches. So put it all together. I think Mike Williams continues to be part of the puzzle, part of the offense for Aaron Rodgers, and one that is not getting as much attention as Garrett Wilson. I think he goes over this number. The lowest number you can find right now at Caesars is 31.5.
Nice. I like that call. As a group, what do we think about Garrett Wilson? Like from a fantasy perspective, are we buying low, Sam? Like his numbers, 4.5 catches minus 155 is extremely juiced. But I don't remember the last time I've seen. Actually, I do remember when the quarterback play was awful last year, but 52.5 receiving yards for Garrett Wilson. Does that seem low to you, or is that just a stay away given what we've seen and Aaron Rodgers is spreading it around? Sam, what do you think about that number?
Honestly, I kind of agree with both. I think it does feel low, but I also think it's pretty accurate from what we've seen. I'll say one thing. If you do like the 4.5 catches, our prop shop doesn't populate it, but you can get that at minus 140 on ESPN bet, which I think is okay. I mean, he has 5 or more receptions in 3 out of 4 games, and it's pretty clear that he was sort of, I mean, I don't want to say that Rodgers was trying to force it because the Denver game was close throughout, but he did see 8 targets. That's one game after coming off of 9 targets right before. So I think they are trying to get him involved, but I really just think it's more of just a function of the offense. The Jets were a team I was sort of selling throughout the offseason, more in terms of fantasy, just because this is sort of the offense that I expected under Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, just a slow, methodical pace. I actually remember writing up in the offseason a piece about Breece Hall and how he's going to be the Aaron Jones possibly leading the team in receptions and targets, just because with Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, I want to say it's a 3-year sample in Green Bay. We saw just Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones right below him, or where all the volume goes. And we're not really seeing that here. We're not seeing Garrett Wilson far and away separate from, Allen Lazard, Mike Williams. So I think that's the difference. We know Aaron Rodgers does have his guys, and I don't think Allen Lazard is a great player, but it's pretty clear that him and Rodgers are always on the same page. They do have that connection going back to Green Bay. Even you see like a player like Allen Lazard was like probably a below average receiver. He still makes his back shoulder grabs with Rodgers, and that's only just from playing their experience in Green Bay. So I think you should pretty much be selling the expectations you had on Garrett Wilson coming into the season, sort of the first round 1-2 turn pick. But I think you should more sort of view him as just maybe mid-tier to high-end some weeks wide receiver too. And I think it's completely okay. I mean, a 4.5 receptions prop, you're not going to get that out of any of the first rounders. You're not going to get that for Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill when Tua comes back. So I think you just got to change your expectations. And this is a really great Minnesota D. I think they are going to pass it more than usual just because of how tough they've been against the run. So, yeah, it's just more tempering expectations at this point.
And we'll see, of course, rumors that Devontae Adams, he can't get rid of his exes. He wants to go either play with Aaron Rodgers or, he wants to play with Derek Carr. And according to DraftKings, the Jets are favored to land Devontae Adams. And I did see this morning that he is willing to restructure his contract. We'll see what happens there for sure. Prop, do we agree with this? Minnesota minus the number, they're going to kill the Jets. Minnesota 4-0 defense, playing pretty good, leading the NFL in sacks and interceptions. Do we agree that they're going to crush the Jets here? Is this a rude awakening for Sam Darnold against his former squad?
I don't know about kill them. I think both defenses will play well. Definitely will lean to points, being tough to come by. But I see the Vikings winning this game, and going into the season, I did not think that, because I like the Jets for at least 10 wins going into the year, and it's a bit shaky right now. I thought they were going to go on like a 5-game win streak, and they lost to the Broncos. So I'm interested to see how they play in London against this tough defense. But if I had to pick a side, I would go with the Vikings. And speaking of the Vikings, I'll get into a first quarter prop that I like. Aaron Jones over 0.5 first quarter receiving yards. That line just should not be there. It should not be available. He's averaging 12.8 receiving yards in the first quarter over in all 4 games this season with 12, 18, and 9 receiving yards. He's averaging 2 targets per game in the first quarter. He's got 2 weeks where he had at least 3 targets in the first. So I think a simple dump off is Sam just kind of spoke on it. I think a simple dump off is all it would take to get him there. And we know he's always been versatile out of the backfield. So Darnold does have a lot of weapons. This Minnesota offense is much better than I expected them to be, and I don't think it's just about making the job easier for Darnold. We're seeing a lot of, I guess you could say, subpar or maybe forgotten about quarterbacks play well this year, and it's about getting right with the right OC and the right team to fit what that quarterback does well. And that's what I think we've seen a lot through the first 4 weeks of the season. So, I like Aaron Jones to get one receiving yard in this one.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. A lot of people may have thought those guys' career completely over, and it's not the case. Since we're sticking with this game, let's just continue with some of these props. So Aaron Jones there for you. Dane, we'll go back to you, and I know that prop likes the same player as you, and we're just looking at it in a different way here. So inside the same game, Jordan Addison over 36.5 receiving yards, Dane.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Addison over 36.5. Here's the thing. First of all, I am a big believer in the sauce, and sauce is going to be on Justin Jefferson, right? And so I'm not saying that Justin Jefferson can't still do his thing, but what does frequently happen is quarterbacks just don't target that side of the field at all because they know that there is great coverage, and then they go to the other wide receiver. I think that's going to be helpful for Jordan Addison on this one. Listen, DJ Reed is also a very good corner, but he's not sauce, and I know Justin Jefferson will be able to do it, but I think Addison is going to get a lot of opportunity in this one. He had 72 yards last week against Green Bay. That was the first time he played since the season opener against the Giants. Against the Giants, he had 35 yards. But he only played in 24 snaps before he got hurt. Okay, so I do believe that, Addison is a real piece of this. I also think that Addison is the big play guy. So he could get over this in just one deep shot down the field. Minnesota, we've been talking about this passing game. We've been talking about the play calling that has helped Sam Darnold. To be quite honest, this is part of the reason why in the offseason, people thought J.J. McCarthy landed in a good spot, right? Because of the play calling, because of the weapons that were there. So it's no kind of surprise that whoever was the quarterback for the Vikings would have some success. Sam Darnold leads the NFL with 11 touchdown passes so far this season. He might have a deep one to Addison, but more importantly is that Addison is back. He's getting his full complement of snaps, and I think he'll be heavily targeted because Sauce will do a job on JJ on the other side of the field. So I think he's going to go at least 37 yards. You can get it at FanDuel at -114.
I like that. So you must like that a little bit as well, prop, because you have a very similar prop bet here, and it's Jordan Addison over 0.5 receiving yards in the first quarter. Anything to add to that, what Dane just mentioned?
No, it's pretty much for all the reasons that Dane mentioned. Is just getting it in the first quarter. 1 yard is just crazy. When I see receivers like this, the clear wide receiver too, Dane already mentioned Sauce having that matchup with Jettas. So I think I like Addison in his matchup with the attention being on the side of the field that Jettas will be on, and it's just one receiving yard. Only played 2 games. Didn't go over against the Giants in week 1, but last week against the Packers had 29 yards in the first quarter. Was that all in that one play? Yeah, that was that one touchdown catch. So, but yeah, I think the Vikings will have the ability to run the ball on the Jets. They're giving up the 12th most rushing yards per game, 128.5 as a team. So I think that'll open up a nice little play action shot to Addison in the first quarter.
Yeah,
Love
to
it.
go
Let's
on to
go.
both of your guys' point, I actually just wanted to look at this while you guys were talking. This is one of our new tools that we have. It's a DVOA adjusted tool, which basically is just a simple way of saying is it's not really looking at the pure stats. It's like because you see a team that looks just terrible against wide receivers, and then like say the Vikings last week, and then you realize that they were playing prevent a lot of the game where a lot of it was garbage time. They were catching up, yada, yada, but this one sort of takes away the noise, and I want to see what the discrepancy was for the production of the wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 2 against the Jets. So we have the wide receiver 1 when they face the Jets. Their production score is -44%, which is the fourth hardest in the league. Yeah. And in comparison, wide receiver 2 is +6%. So that's really the difference between the wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 2. So Addison wasn't really a guy I was looking at, but that's some pretty staggering stuff right there.
Yeah, it is. The DVOA statistics are fantastic. Again, you can check it all out over at FTN Fantasy. Speaking of DVOA, I'll jump in here next. I'm looking at 2 Packers. Both of them are probably pretty trendy, and I think this number in particular will move up. I'm drinking a little bit of juice on the Jaden Reed over 4.5 catches at -140. That's at Bet365. I like the yardage number better at 60.5. I actually just looked as you guys were talking. It's now 61.5. The Rams, they rank 31st in pass DVOA. They've really struggled to stop the run. They've struggled to stop the pass. Jordan Love returned last week. And although he did struggle against the Vikings, he had some throws that were off point, a couple, fluky interceptions. He still threw 3, but 4 touchdowns. He had 389 passing yards in that game. He hooked up with Jaden Reed 7 times for 139 yards in 2 games together with Love and with Reed. 277 yards Reed has and 2 touchdowns in those 2 games. So only Washington has surrendered more passing touchdowns than the Rams to wide receivers. And overall, this team has allowed a league high 9.1 yards per attempt through the air. It's a significant number from a fantasy football perspective. The Rams have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks, the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers, 37 a game in a half-point setting. And Jaden Reed is among the leaders in yards after the catch. He's inside the top 10 at the wide receiver position. So I love his route running ability. I wish I had more shares of him in fantasy, not going to lie. I think this guy is a stud. They find ways to get the ball in his hands. Christian Watson's dealing with an ankle sprain, not really a factor anyways. But because Watson is sidelined, I'm going to Dontavian Wicks. I know he's a big hot waiver wire pickup this week, but 44.5 receiving yards. He's coming off a game where he played 58 snaps, which was a season high for him, just a couple behind Romeo Doubs, who's on the field quite a bit. He racked up 13 targets in that game. He had 78 yards. So I don't think he's going to get 13 targets again. They probably will have success running the football against the Rams, but Jordan Love should do enough with those 2 weapons. And also, Wicks is a nice route runner. He's got good hands and is good after the catch as well. So I'm going in on both of those Packers, and I was looking at their touchdown props last night. They're all plus money. Wicks is around plus 177, Reed's around plus 140, and I think Romeo Doubs, who I do believe will be involved in this game as well, is around plus 150. So pretty good odds for a team that's just coughed it up through the air. Their secondary looks awful at the moment, and they're giving up a lot of touchdowns to wide receivers. So some Packer love here. I even like them on the spread, and our model is showing an edge in the over, I think at 47.5 in this game as well. So a little bit of love for the Cheeseheads. Let's head to you, Sam, for your first pick. What do you got?
Yeah, so I was sort of going into this game, the Washington versus Cleveland game. I thought it was a good time to sort of sell high on the Commanders and buy low on Cleveland. But then this was sort of just a prop that I just stumbled upon. It's on DraftKings under receiving, where they do some of this stuff where you can do head-to-head props or do a combined prop. And the one that stood out to me, the first one, is Terry McLaurin and Jordan Akins under 70.5 receiving yards. So this one, number one, I wanted to specifically see what kind of line they'd hang up for Terry McLaurin. He's been killing it the last 2 weeks. But a really wild stat is Terry McLaurin currently leads the NFL in air yard share at 57.28%. So he has over 50% of the Washington Commanders' total air yards, and still he's only averaging 47.8 receiving yards per game. That has to do with Jaden Daniels' ADOT. He's sort of been conservative. I mean, we saw him break the record in completions for a rookie. And again, I think Jaden Daniels is going to be great, but it's pretty clear that he is a conservative passer, which it's been getting the job done. So I can't really blame him. But the other thing is, so you're pairing Terry McLaurin with Jordan Akins, and we still don't have word on David Njoku. He did get back to practice earlier in the week, and it does look like he's playing. None of the tight end props are on the board, but if Njoku was out, I would think Jordan Akins' line would open up around 9.5. He has 10 receiving yards in 2 of the last 3 games with David Njoku. Even with David Njoku out the last game, he saw a season low 47% snap share. And that's a season low including week 1 when he sort of came in for Njoku at halftime. So it looked like even if Njoku were to miss, they were sort of getting away from Jordan Akins. And this secondary is a team that we've wanted to pick on all season long, but they've been really tough on tight ends. I don't think they're actually tough. I think it's more just teams choosing to beat them with wide receivers. But still, on the season, they've allowed the second fewest targets per game to tight ends. That's less than 4. Tight ends are averaging 3.5 receptions against the Commanders. And they're also allowing the 4th fewest receptions to the position. That's down at 2.8. And the 4th fewest receiving yards at 21.5. So I already didn't think Akins was going to be a large factor just from what we saw last week. Again, I think I'd say Njoku is probably 60-70% to play. So Jordan Akins might just give you a goose egg out there. So it's almost just like taking an under 70.5 on Terry McLaurin alone. And Cleveland's defense, it isn't as great as it was last season, but still they're allowing the 11th fewest receiving yards per game to opposing wide receivers. So it is still an above average secondary, and I think it will get better.
Yeah, man, it's crazy the lack of throws. I mean, he's been super efficient, Jaden Daniels, but just like I remember after week 2 or maybe week 3, all of a sudden Terry's like 56% air yard share. It's like, whoa, that's just it's a crazy number. And I know it's a super small sample size, but yeah, it's gonna be a true test for how good that offense is over the next couple weeks against the Brownies, and I think they have the Ravens next week as well. Let's head back over to you, Dane. Where are we going next? Should we talk about the King Henry?
We should talk about the King. We should talk about the King, who, by the way, leads the NFL in rushing yards with 480, 33 more than Jordan Mason. The Baltimore run game, no surprise here, number 1 in the NFL. They lead in yards. They lead in yards per carry. They're third in our success rate metric, which, depending on down and distance, really kind of keeps you on schedule. When they run, in essence, they stay on schedule 49.3% of the time. And after week 1, when we saw Justice Hill and Isaiah Likely pop off in Kansas City, people were like, wait a second, are they going to feed the rock to King Henry? Well, they have been, okay? Outside of week 1, Derrick Henry has had at least 18 or more carries. The last 2 weeks have been absolutely ridiculous, threatening 200 yards in each game. And then here's the thing. They face Cincinnati. Cincinnati is bottom 10 in yards allowed on the ground. We saw Washington carve them up on Monday Night Football on the ground. It wasn't only Jaden Daniels, which made them not punt or turn the ball over that entire game. And we over at Stats Hub, we have a stat called win yards. Win yards are not only juking guys, but also after contact, okay? And Cincinnati is in the bottom tier in terms of allowing win yards. You know who can get yards after contact? Derrick Henry. I don't think that is a good match. I see the number here at, what do we have it? 84.5, 83.5 at some places. You can go to Bet Rivers, and this man has gone over 150, 199 the last couple of weeks. And this is what that Baltimore offense should be in a game where I think they have a good matchup, in a game where I think they win, and there'll be kind of closer potential at the end as well. Give me the King to keep his hot streak, continue to lead the NFL in rushing. Give me the over on Derrick Henry.
I love that. King Henry, man, he may just score a touchdown every week. I wasn't joking, Dane, on the series show, and right. You know you weren't either, that this guy may get 20 touchdowns this season. We'll see. I mean, Gus Edwards,
King Henry
no bet,
and Lamar Jackson are something like 3rd and 4th in the league in rushing DVOA. Like, this run game in a league that's all passing, in a league where the 2 high safeties have to come on back to account for that, Baltimore is going to punch you in the mouth. And quite frankly, if they didn't abandon that in the second half of the AFC Championship game, this team would have been in the Super Bowl last year. They get King Henry to kind of address that mistake, and I think that is the lead punch for Baltimore. It's not going to stop in week 5.
No, and Lamar has a history of running all over the Bengals over the course of his career as well. So I think that will continue with both of those guys. And yeah, Gus Edwards, no back, had more goal line attempts than Gus Edwards last year, who had 12 rushing touchdowns. And now you just add the King to that offense. It could be a record season for him. And he's already had a lot of good ones on his NFL resume. Let's head back over to you, Prop. This is a prop where we all like this one. I think we gave it last week. I'm pretty sure between me, you, Sam, and yeah, I'm pretty sure at least us 3 and maybe Marshall, shout out to him. We have been all over George Pickens, I think, every week. And we feel like, again, this is another smash spot for George Pickens against the Cowboys. Over 54.5 receiving yards, Prop. This is your guy.
Yes, sir. Well, number one it's been pretty clear that I'm a Justin Fields believer. I'm so happy for him through 4 weeks. I expect it to continue. That'll be a conversation for another day, but hopefully Pittsburgh is smart. But Pickens, I mean, he's dominating the target share for receivers. Him and Freiermuth pretty much are the only 2 options through the first 4 weeks. They both are tied with a 17.8% target share. Pickens is playing 71.6% of the snaps, so crushing it there as far as the receivers. We're leading them in receiving yards. He's caught 11 of his 13 targets this season. And now you get this matchup with the Cowboys, whose secondary is very vulnerable, especially to the deep shot. And I think that's what Fields and Pickens do well. Pickens leads the NFL in 20-plus yard receptions with 5. So I'm not mad at his longest reception either. But 54.5 yards, this number should be, at least 10 yards higher, I would say. We got guys like DK Metcalf sitting at 65.5 weekly, which probably should start getting adjusted now too. But I think this kind of goes with Fields' passing yards, right? They drop him at like 180, 170 each week, which is wrong. And then that's why the receivers' lines are so low. So, yeah, Pickens is over this number in 3 out of 4, averaging 71 yards per game. I like him for up to 100, to be honest with you. At home, Sunday Night Football, I'm all on the Pickens train.
I think he's a guy that you can certainly ladder, right? He's a big play guy. I mean, led the NFL in yards per catch last year. And if you just look at the game log, I mean, 85 yards in week 1, 29. Patrick Surtain. How many times have we talked about Surtain? We're going to talk about him all year long. We're going to fade.
And remember,
Surtain.
He had about 60 yards called back. He was cooking Surtain.
He did. He's like a 50-yard touchdown, I think, too, right? That was nullified.
I think he would have been down like the 2-yard line, but yeah.
Yeah. And then 57 yards against the Chargers, and then 113 last week on 11 targets and 7 grabs. So I think this was one of our biggest edges last week in terms of just the number that came out for him. I forget what it was. I feel like it was around 49.5, maybe around 50, but we had him for roughly 75, 73 receiving yards in our projections, and we undershot that one. But Vegas certainly undershot it a little bit more there. You mentioned DK Metcalf. I know you're on him. I am as well. I think we both have this in the bet tracker. Again, if you look at DK, you'll see week 1, quiet, Patrick Surtain. And then the last couple weeks, 129 yards, 104 yards, and then 104 yards as well. We're really seeing DK's game to another level here. I don't think that Geno Smith is going to chuck it 50 some odd times this week. I don't think he really needs to against the Giants. But he is first in the NFL in pass attempts. He's first in the NFL in passing yards. He's second in the NFL in completion percentage. Ryan Grubb has done a lot of good things with this offense. You're hearing people in Chicago complain about Shane Waldron and the play calling and the route trees of certain wide receivers in that offense. And all JSN talked about all offseason was the creativity that Ryan Grubb was going to be able to bring to this offense. And we're certainly seeing it, and it is benefiting everybody, including DK Metcalf, who I heard Jeff Ratcliffe talk about it on his show, playing the Roma Dunze role in Ryan Grubb's offense from Washington last year, which is helping DK take his game to another level. So this is just way too low. 65.5 for a guy that's hit the century mark in 3 straight games. And you look at the pace of play, pace tool over at FTN Fantasy, pass percentage, it's, I think, number 2 at over 60%. And then you look at our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, which I know Prop you do as well. He's got the best matchup, according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, against Deonte Banks, who is among the leaders in yards per route run allowed, inside the top 7 this season. So he has a really good matchup this week. And it may be the Kenneth Walker show. They may lean on him a little bit in the second half. That's fine. It just takes a couple shots to DK over 65.5. Anything to add there, Prop?
I think you pretty much covered it. Since I've been tracking the wide receiver and cornerback matchup tool, the whichever player has a 99.9% edge is going off. It was St. Brown 2 weeks ago, covered his yards, and he scored a touchdown. Last week it was
Lamb.
Who?
Lamb.
Oh yeah, CD Lamb, Thursday Night Football. I think he covered his base. Yeah, he covered his baseline.
He covered his base, but he did 3 more yards for the century.
Yeah,
burned a few of us.
So
we laddered him up. It's a good tool. It's a good tool, and it's been crushing. And it's DK Metcalf is grading out pretty well. CeeDee Lamb again, even though he's up against Joey Porter. Jaden Reed's inside the top 5 in terms of a matchup as well. We'll get to Nico Collins in a little bit. Let's kick it back over to you, Sam. What do you got?
Yeah, so this is going to be sticking to the same game, sort of the same idea. It's going to be another one of those dual ones. It's going to be Jordan Akins and Zach Ertz under 47.5 receiving yards. Again, for both of these guys, I'm almost viewing this as just a standalone prop for Terry and Ertz. I mean, we don't have a line for Jordan Akins, assuming, like I said, I think Njoku does suit up. But if Akins plays, if you want to guess that he'd be around 9.5, like I said, he has 10. in 2 of the last 3 games, but it would probably be lower because, again, he had a season low snap share last week. So regardless, Zach Ertz has been the clear number 2 below Terry McLaurin. He has a 15.24% target share. Like I said, second on the team. But the last game we saw sort of these guys, Noah Brown, we're starting to see him get involved. And I think he is eventually going to be the number 2 behind Terry McLaurin as he gets ramped up, continuing to get more familiar with the offense. But even Olamide Zaccheaus, he had a pretty solid game out there. It was a game that they controlled for most of the outing. So I think Ertz will eventually drop off. But even if you look at it, he had a season low in targets 3, season low in receiving yards 22. So again, this line just feels a little bit too high. Even if you want to look at his entire season, he's still averaging 37.5 receiving yards. So if Jordan Akins can get that 10, you'd be right at this number. So, I mean, like I said, I would take the under. If Zach Ertz, I would take under on his season average, under on Jordan Akins to get double-digit yards. So, again, same concept as the last one, under on the 47.5 receiving yards combined.
Nice. And Diggs, since we're on you, Stephon Diggs, a little bit of juice here, but I like this prop a lot. And fun little revenge spot for the old boy. I'm sure he had it circled on his calendar against the Bills. We will see Tank Dell back, but I still think a lot of the balls are going to be thrown to Diggs' way and Nico Collins this weekend, Sam.
Yeah, I had this circled as well. I mean, the whole week I was constantly refreshing, waiting for a Diggs line to drop. Finally got this 4.5. And like I said, I'm more than okay taking the juice on this one. Number one, he just looks a lot better. He truly does look happy to be in Houston. I don't know how much weight you want to put into this, but if you look at ESPN's receiving metrics, they had Diggs rated out as a 64 open score. Right now, he leads the team at 84. That's one spot above Nico Collins, who's at 83 right now. I'm not saying Diggs is better than Nico, but he does get sort of those layups in the intermediate area of the field. And Dell being back is actually a good thing for Diggs in this matchup. The last time we saw him with Dell, he had a season-high 12 targets. The last 2 weeks, this is one game with Dell, one game without. He has a total of 21 targets. That's 6th most in the NFL during that span. So I think he's just going to be a big part of the game plan. I do think, I want to be careful with how much you want to play into the narrative, but when he's actually playing well, I do think that they are going to get him going early, and I think he's going to want to show out against his former team. And Buffalo is pretty stout as a secondary as a whole. They're, I want to say, number 6 in pass defense DVOA, but specifically for Diggs, with Dell coming back, that moves Diggs back to the slot. The first 3 games with Dell, he played, I want to say, a little over 60% of his snaps line up in the slot, but he's going to get matched up with Teron Johnson, Teron Johnson would be the primary defender in the slot. And on our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, we have Diggs rated out at a 74.6 rating, which is top 10 among all receivers in week 5. So even though it is a tough secondary, Diggs particularly benefits in this matchup. So I think he's going to get a couple quick looks just in the first quarter, like I said, just to get him going. And I do like betting on the receptions a little bit more than the yards, just because we've seen sort of his ADOT fluctuate throughout the season. And I don't know how much Dell impacts that, but I mean, if he gets a short ADOT routes against Buffalo, I think he can get 5 grabs in the first half.
Yeah, I think so too. And I actually don't even mind the 5.5 at plus 116. I mean, I prefer the 4.5, and I don't mind spending a little bit more juice to get to that number. But I think he's going to get 6+ catches in this game, not because it's a revenge spot, because of what you talked about. And the Bills secondary is good. They haven't faced too many. I know week 1 was Arizona. We saw Dortch kind of light them up in the slot. They took away Trey McBride. In week 2, they limited Tyreek Hill. Tua got hurt in that game, but they still limited Tyreek Hill, and they used Jonnu Smith in the slot. Christian Kirk was nowhere to be found in the first couple weeks of the season in the slot, ate them up in that game as well. And then, of course, Baltimore just ran all over them last week. But Diggs, by the way, if you are thinking about a touchdown, Diggs for the tutty against his old team, he's plus 195 over at Caesars, which is a pretty decent number for Stephon Diggs, even, forgetting the whole narrative of the revenge game. I'll jump in here and I'm on Nico. And I understand that again, we just addressed the secondary and it being tough, but man, this guy is just, people are now starting to give him the credit of being like a top tier wide receiver. He's leading the NFL in receiving yards. Last year, he led the NFL in yards per route run. He's hit the century mark 3 times already, like a $117, 135, 151. He's cleared this number in all 4 games, 86 yards. He's so explosive after the catch, and I see Diggs, and I understand what you're saying, and that, they'll use that mismatch to their advantage. But how could you not, get the ball to Nico with his route running ability, big body, the contested catches? He's pretty good after the catch as well. The targets over the last couple weeks, 10, 10, and 15. And again, Tank Dell is back, but I just view him as like a boomer bust kind of gadget, busted coverage potentially. But the balls really will go to Nico and will go to Stephon Diggs. This should be a really fun game between Houston and Buffalo. But I'm in on Nico, and he does grade pretty well, as I mentioned, both him and Diggs in the wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. So I'm going to take this every time, no matter the matchup. Maybe not if it's sauce, Dane, but 78.5. I'm definitely going to jump on Nico Collins there. Let's kick it back over to you, Dane. Probably should have brought this up when we were talking about the Seahawks, but this is a team that's playing really good football right now. And even though they lost last week, there are a lot of great takeaways, I think, from them in the second half going into Detroit and making that a game. You like them at home this week?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting. We're 36 minutes into the betting show, and this is the first bet we're giving that's actually a side of a game that is not a prop or something else, right? So, yeah, I do like the Seahawks. The other things I want to reference from earlier in the show, Meaney opened the show saying we went 12 of 13 last week. You can't do better. You know who went better than that? Jared Goff went better than that last week. He went 18 of 18. The Detroit passing game, when you throw in Amon-Ra's 1 for 1, they were 19 of 19. And I bring that up here because that's what the Seahawks had to keep up with, right? That's what the Seahawks had to keep up with last week on Monday Night Football. And that's part of the reason Geno Smith was putting it up 50-plus times, where he threw for, I think, 390-some-odd yards. Geno Smith leads the NFL with 1,182 yards passing. He's second in completion percentage behind only Jaden Daniels at 72.3%. And guess what? The Giants allow 72% completion percentage against them. That is 3rd worst in the NFL. So in essence, I believe Seattle will be able to move the ball and get down the field against this Giants offense. I don't think they're going to be stopped. And the Giants offense doesn't offer the same kind of competition that we saw with Detroit and Jared Goff being perfect for the Seattle team on Monday night. The other thing that I think is huge that I want to reference here, Prop, when he was talking about George Pickens is 10th in the NFL in target share at 24%. You know who's 9th? Wan'Dale Robinson is 9th at 24%. And you know who is first? It is Malik Neighbors at 33%. And this is weird to me because remember, the Giants played on Thursday night last week. And now a week later, they are saying that Malik Neighbors is only in the quote-unquote early stages of the concussion protocol. If this game was a normal Sunday game, he would already be ruled out. I don't think Malik Neighbors is going to play. I think that leaves Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's about it. I do not think this Giants offense, who could only muster field goals against Dallas, will be able to quote-unquote keep up with Geno Smith, an efficient and effective pass offense. I think Seattle coming back home will do enough. I will lay the 6 points. I am worried about Neighbors playing. Even if he does, I still think Seattle can win this game by more than a touchdown. The one question I have for you guys, there's different factors we consider all the time, right? Like, does this matchup matter? Does being a home dog matter? The one thing that gave me cause for pause is that the Giants played last week on Thursday night, and Seattle played on Monday night, right? So there is that rest disparity. Is that something that you guys believe in when making plays? Do you think that body clock of it all, the rest factor, that rest disparity would be enough for maybe Seattle to come out flat or the Giants to look well rested and keep this close? I personally don't in this situation, but I wondered what you thought, Meaney and others, about that concept of rest disparity and how much it plays when you're making bets.
Yeah, I think it certainly needs to be in the back of your mind. And I'm more so thinking about it if it's like 3 or 4 weeks in a row where it's like you're playing a team potentially where they're on longer rest and you're not. I remember the Eagles when they went through that 4 game stretch where they really got rocked against like the Cowboys and the Niners, and they squeaked out victories against the Chiefs and the Bills, but they were on short rest. Now their opposing teams were on, extended rest. I think the Niners actually have 6 or 7 games this week where they're on short rest, and the opposing team actually has a little bit of extra rest there. It's interesting because it's a team that traveled to the east and they're back to the west, but I think at home, the new coaching, there's something special going on with McDonald and Grubb. Like there's something happening there. Seattle's a very tough place to play. So Sam, I don't look into it too much for this week. I think it's fine, and Seattle should be in a good spot to win by a touchdown at home,
especially if there's no neighbors.
Especially if there's no neighbors. And Sam, what do you have to add about that with that?
Yeah, it's not really something I look into. I do think it matters. I mean, players have pretty openly said that they think it matters. That's why they want to do away with the short week. But for me personally, when I'm picking sides, it's not something that I really look at. Maybe as a tiebreaker, but I mean, the neighbors one, obviously, if it's a difference between him playing and not playing just because of a longer week, obviously situations like that or any injuries, a few days can make a difference. So maybe if it's a prop that I'm looking at for a guy that might have picked up an injury, maybe I feel better if they have a longer week. But as a whole, not really something I really pay attention to.
I'm glad you brought up Wan'Dale. I was looking, of course, we're not going to see any props for him with Malik Neighbors being in the early stages of the concussion protocol, but we've had some success with Wan'Dale Robinson. I think a couple weeks ago we had the over 4.5 catches at plus 125. We ended up in game betting him to 6.5, 8.5, and over 10.5. Last week when they played the Cowboys, and he did hit the 11 catches, if you can believe it. He's inside the top 5 in targets and catches. So is Neighbors. But the offense does seem to be going through to 2 guys. Singletary didn't practice yesterday. We'll keep an eye on him. But Malik Neighbors is a guy, or Wan'Dale Robinson, rather, is a guy that's had 5+ catches, I think, in 8 of his last 10 games, dating back to last season. So he's very much involved in this offense when he is healthy. And you're right. It's been a big prop show. Between all of us, we're up like 75 units over at FTN Fantasy when it comes to props. As a team, I just did some quick math. We are up 84 units as a squad on props alone. And between us 4, we're up over 70. So it is a heavy prop show, but we're finding some edges there. And we rounded out with the Seahawks. And we'll round it out here with just a quick look at the schedule. If you're still hanging around in Survivor, congrats. I said this last week. You do not need us for Survivor picks, at least not for me. Here we go. If you're looking for a Survivor pick, I mean, there's a lot of close games here, but the larger spreads, Seattle at home against the Giants, I think, are in play. You have Kansas City 5-point favorites against the Saints. Actually, I think the Saints will hang around and cover in that game. So that's one I would shy away from. You have San Fran if you haven't used them. If you didn't use them against the New England Patriots, they're 7.5-point favorites. Divisional game, but at home against Arizona. As for dogs, Sam, is there any dogs you're feeling here as like, again, there's a lot of close games here, but would you consider the Browns on the road at plus 3.5? The Colts, we're still waiting to see if it's Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. Our NFL betting model has the Jags picking up their first victory of the season in quite some time. Where are you looking if you are looking for an upset or a surprise? Because, hey, hashtag 2024 season has been nothing but dogs.
Yeah, the one, I mean, this is a pretty close one, but the one that I'm looking at is going to be the Cowboys over the Steelers. I don't want to overreact with the Steelers with their first loss of the season, but I think the more concerning part is the state of the offensive line. They just lost James Dean. Broderick Jones isn't going to be playing, so the offensive line is already falling apart. And then Isaac Seumalo, I mean, he hasn't played yet. So that's 3 of their 5 offensive linemen they had as starters coming into the season. So I think that's pretty concerning. George Pickens, he's a guy that we love, that we've constantly been backing. But now you have Van Jefferson. He looks like he might play, but he's still questionable, which is kind of sad to say that he's been their clear number 2 wide receiver. Jaylen Warren, I don't think is going to play. Say what you will about how much running backs matter, but no Jalen Warren. Cordell Patterson was far and away the more explosive back in the game we saw last Sunday. So with George Pickens, Najee Harris, Justin Fields, just them three with a broken offensive line, I don't know how much offense we're going to see out of that team. Again, I don't want to overreact, but Indianapolis should have been a matchup where they dominate. And we did see Justin Fields sort of pick it up in the second half, but I don't know. This Dallas offense did look pretty good last time we saw them. So I think maybe, I don't want to say that's not really a huge upset. I mean, it's a 2.5 spread, but I can definitely see Dallas pulling that one out.
Yeah, man. Plus money, dog, on the road. I dig that as well. Where would you go, Dane?
For me, I think I go the Arizona Cardinals because they're getting more than a touchdown in San Francisco and in a divisional matchup. And this Arizona Cardinals team, I know they're only 1-3, but they've only been blown out once. That was against Washington. Remember, they were up against Buffalo early in that game in the first half. They had Detroit come in, and that was a close game. That was just a touchdown. So, and, I still think San Francisco is figuring it out on some level, right? We know Kittle is back. Ayuk still needs to get going. Mason has been great, but I think there is still – there's some meat on the bone, let's say, still for San Francisco. And I have seen these divisional matchups. You throw the records out, they are close games. I can see a backdoor cover here from the Arizona Cardinals with it over a touchdown. If you're giving me 7.5, I actually think what will happen is San Fran will win the game, but not necessarily cover. The back door could be open. This Arizona offense is fun, right? With McBride and Harrison and Connor. And so I think they'll do enough. And if San Fran gets up by 2 scores, they may go into a little bit more of a prevent mode. I think the 7.5 is too many for this San Francisco team. So I'll take the Cardinals on the road in a divisional matchup as long as it's more than 7.
Okay. All right. I know our NFL betting model doesn't, or our wide receiver quarterback matchup tool doesn't like Marvin Harrison Jr., but you play Marvin Harrison Jr. in your fantasy squad. It's been touchdown machine. Prop, we'll finish off with you. Anything to add? Any upset brewing, survivor? What do you think?
Man, with me, if I play a side, I have to absolutely like it.
Don't force it. You're not feeling it.
Yeah, really didn't have anyone. I did want to add some notes. Roger Jones is not hurt for the Steelers. He's playing. And Siamalu was a full participant in practice this week. I follow the Steelers pretty heavily, so that's why I know that.
Big Fields guy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But yeah, as far as the side, I really got nothing, man. I liked Carolina before the line moved down, but sitting at 2.5 now, kind of want to stay away from that. So yeah, I won't force it.
I'll jump in. I'll say I think the Saints may surprise some people. They've been good this year. They had a tough loss last week. There's a couple random things that happened in that football game against the Falcons. Losing McCoy on the offensive line does hurt. That offensive line was playing really good to start the season, and a lot of play action with Clint Kubiak and whatnot. But this Chiefs offense, it hasn't been great since the start of last season. It hasn't been explosive. Mahomes is not pushing the ball down the field. No Rashee Rice, no Hollywood. You have the deep threatening Xavier Worthy. What are we doing here? Are we getting excited again about Sky Moore and Juju Smith-Schuster and Watson, all the bums that couldn't catch passes last year in this offense? And they don't have Pacheco in the backfield either. So there's a couple KC props I like that I didn't give on the show. Like, we're seeing Xavier Worthy at 40 receiving yards. He can certainly do that on 1 or 2 catches. You're seeing Travis Kelce at 5.5 catches. He hit the over 6.5. He should be alive again. The offense should run through those 2 guys, but I think it'll be a little bit of a slower pace. I think they'll lean on Kareem Hunt in this game. He had a good first game in his first game back with KC. And I like the Saints to go in there and hang around and keep that close at +5. And it's not like Derek Carr is not used to playing at Arrowhead. He's had some decent games against the Chiefs as a member of the Raiders. So I think that they'll hang around in that game, and we'll see. It should be a fun one there. And I don't know, I think it's hard to say the Chiefs are in trouble, but history is against them as looking to be the first team 3 straight Super Bowl wins. And if they get it done this year, given the injuries that they've had, it may be the most impressive of all of them. And if you remember, they actually went through on the road last year as dogs in a majority of their games. Appreciate it, guys. Prop God, give him a follow. My guy Spitting Speeds. We have Sam Choudhury here as well. Just tweeted out the show if you guys are just catching in here live, you can go back and watch. And as I said, Prop Shop, Parlay Calculator, 2 tools that are free. Check it out. Use promo code FTN at PrizePicks or Underdog Fantasy. If you want to join the family, FTNFantasy.com. All the picks and props are in the Discord. And we're giving some analysis as well with some of the picks. I did see a question earlier, a starter sit. The answer was Wicks. I don't know if that dude is hanging around anymore. I think he had Ramondre Stevenson.
Or Waddle.
That was it right there. With news that Stevenson could maybe take a seat behind Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
It may be a little bit of a risky play. Dude, Gibson's fumbled a bunch too over the course of his career. That was interesting comments from Mayo, but something that, I'd like Stevenson heading in before the comments. I would consider maybe buying low, but I think this week you may want to play Wicks. Just given those comments, who knows? It could be Antonio Gibson starting that game and not Ramondre, and Wicks, as we talked about earlier, is in a good spot. All right, guys, thanks for taking the time to hang out. Do us a solid, smash that like button, tell a friend, subscribe to the YouTube page. We'll be back next week, every Thursday here at FTN Fantasy. Have a good one. Let the winners be yours. Peace.